What up, bitches? Welcome back to Law of Attraction Changed My Life. I'm your host, Francesca Amber, and today I'm with Owen O'Kane, the author of Addicted to Anxiety. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here.
Yeah, good to be here.
I discovered this idea that anxiety is addictive about a month ago. I don't know how I came across it, but it was saying that anxiety is as addictive as cortisol. And I was like, fucking hell, surely not. And I feel like as soon as you know that, you see it showing up in your life, don't you? And you become aware of it. So please tell us about this book, the title, how you got it.
Right, where to begin? So anxiety and trauma, so I'm a psychotherapist, and anxiety and trauma are the two things that I'm probably most interested in for two reasons. I mean, professionally, I'm interested in it, but as a human being, my kind of early life had a lot of significant amount of trauma and anxiety in it. So I think when you've experienced something, then you kind of take an interest in it. And I knew at some point I was going to do an anxiety book, but I wasn't going to do a sort of fluffy, heal your anxiety in a day or anything like that. There, I was clear that I wanted it to be kind of hard hitting and truthful, because anxiety's tough.
Yeah.
For anyone who's had anxiety or anyone listening with anxiety, it's not easy. But there is an addictive component to it. And that's hard to hear because we often get more involved in our anxiety than we realise, and we contribute more to our anxiety than we realise. Whereas most people say, oh, it's happening to me, or I suffer from anxiety. And that's all very, very true. But we don't have the conversation about, but what are you doing that keeps it going and fuels it? And that's the addictive component of it, really, because the thoughts are quite addictive. The emotions are quite addictive, even the body stuff. Let me give you an example. So I had a client there a couple of weeks ago, and she came in, she's been doing brilliantly, had anxiety most of her life. And she came into therapy and she said, oh, I'm doing much better. And she looked better and she sounded better. And I said, that's good. And she said, I woke up the other day for the first time in years and I didn't have knots in my stomach. And I said, well, that's a breakthrough. And then she paused and then she went, yeah, but it lasted for about 10 seconds because I then started to worry about why I didn't have the knots in my stomach.
Right.
So there is that sort of dependency thing, because anxiety comes with a promise of keeping you safe. It's protecting
Is that
you.
its purpose?
That's the purpose.
Because everything has a purpose, right?
Yeah.
So anxiety is there to help us.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, without it, we should have it. I get really annoyed when I see the courses of the book saying get rid of your anxiety. Why the fuck would you want to get rid of your anxiety? We need it. So anxiety is a really useful mechanism. The problem with it is when it's ramped up and it's working too hard.
Right.
And you kind of develop an unhealthy relationship with the anxiety or a dependent relationship with the anxiety, that's when it becomes difficult.
And is it from a chemical point of view? I was reading in your book that you are essentially addicted to the chemical high almost, even though it's not a comfortable feeling.
You can be. I mean, look, if you think what happens chemically in the body, when you're anxious, the chemicals in the body are almost identical to the chemicals that happen when you're excited.
Right. Yes.
So you've got a very similar thing going on. So, we all like, people like excitement. We do. We're human beings. We like that feeling. Anxiety doesn't feel good, but there is something about it that it's kind of quite alluring, and kind of comes with that promise in the background. If I'm wired, if I'm ready, if I'm kind of armed and charged, then I'm going to prevent something happening.
Right.
So in a real situation, like if someone came running into this room today and you and I suddenly thought, shit, there's a problem here, like we need to get out of here, our bodies would immediately be filled with chemicals that would make sure that you and I get out of the room quickly.
Yeah.
So that would be a normal anxiety response. But when you're going through your everyday life and you're at work or you're sitting at home with your other half and you're in that anxious state where you're ramped up and you're prepared for threat and you're on guard and you're on watch, that's when it starts to become unhealthy.
Right.
Because your body's charged the whole time, just watching out.
And that's not healthy to be in that place.
Not all the
which
time.
I think so many of us are all the time.
Yeah.
Do you think, you were saying you had quite a lot of trauma in your younger life, in your childhood. What do you think that certain people are more predisposed to anxiety because of their childhood and because of what you've experienced?
It's a big question. I mean, it depends on the individual. I mean, some people there can be a genetic component. For some people, it can be trauma linked. It can be family. It can be social context. It can be religions as well. I mean, I'm a Catholic. I grew up Irish and Catholic.
Oh.
I mean, that's a whole other story in itself. I mean, that's like and gay, so that's kind of like a triple.
Hosea, take me to
threat.
church.
It's like the holy trinity of shame.
Yeah,
Put them three
that's
together.
like the worst combo.
It is, isn't it?
Ever.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I grew up in a war zone and Irish, Catholic and gay on top. So there was, there was good ingredients there for feeling anxious, really.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise that until I left, really. But I think for some people, I don't think it's ever one thing. Now, I should say something here that's really important because people always have a go at me when I talk about anxiety generally. Because there can be other contexts. So if someone has ADHD or a learning need or a special need of some description, or particularly with kids and stuff, there can be context. It's different, and somebody might need more specific specialist support. So when I'm talking about anxiety, I'm talking about it in the general sense. I'm not talking about it from ADHD or any specialist presentation. I think it's really important to say that because people often have a go and say, yeah, but that's not true because I've got something else going on. So we're talking here generally.
Yeah.
But there's never one cause in my experience. You never meet somebody anxious because of one thing. There's normally multiple factors that go on that kind of, result in them being anxious. But the biggest factor for me is their involvement with the anxiety.
Right.
And how
you're responding to it.
How they respond and how they feed the anxiety. For me, that's key.
Okay.
Because some of the other stuff we can't really change. We're not going to change the world. We're not going to change our families, our backgrounds, our stories.
Yeah.
We don't change any of that, but we can change how we manage our anxiety.
Because I'm just thinking of everyone that's listening, what is triggering their anxiety? Where are they feeling it? And I think there's sometimes this feeling of like, and especially when you talk about trauma as well, that you feel like it has to be this big thing that you've experienced.
No.
But I heard somebody talk a couple of weeks ago about how being a mother, sometimes you can experience like mini stressors throughout the day. So I've got one particular daughter who I think she's bullying me, actually. She's only 4, but she's bullying me.
I've got a dog that does that.
Fuck it. It's the thing is, I wake up in the morning and sometimes I wake up with a feeling of dread.
Yeah.
And it's almost like living with an abusive partner where you're like, oh, what are they going to do today? Like, what's going to send them off? If I say the wrong thing or if I accidentally, like, if the door knocks while she's in the middle of a sentence, that'll be enough. And I find myself being on the edge and like I get a racing heart.
Yeah.
And this is me just in my home making breakfast.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So do you find that these days it is mostly things like that? It's small stresses rather than big things?
I think it can be. So it can be for a lot of people. It could be an example like you've given. It could be dealing with a difficult boss at work. It could be going on holiday, like, even planning to go on holiday.
If I go on holiday, I get IBS. My stomach blows up. I look 8 months pregnant.
Really?
Every time.
That's what you would not believe how common that is. That we think going on holiday is going to really be relaxing and chilling. For a lot of people, it can create anxiety because they're leaving home, new routine. They're not familiar with the environment. There's a lot of uncertainty. If you think about the definition of anxiety in general is it's an intolerance of uncertainty.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's clinically what
uncertainty.
I'd say. It's an intolerance of uncertainty. So if you think about everyday life for most people comes with a load of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And if you like certainty and you like predictability or you're a bit of a perfectionist, then you're probably going to struggle a bit more because if you haven't got predictability or certainty and you're a bit intolerant of it, then you're going to have this internal conflict.
Right.
Which then impacts loads of things, but it impacts the energy as well because there's part of you thinking, I want things to go this way.
Yeah.
I know you talk a lot about manifesting and that, that's your interest area and you're interested in energy. So you'll understand that whole concept of natural flow.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're creating natural resistance by saying, I don't want it to be this way.
Right.
It shouldn't be happening. What if I don't cope? I need to know. Then we're kind of creating internal resistance, which of course then will feed anxiety.
So the anxiety is essentially thinking about the problem, even if it's not consciously, and imagining the worst outcomes or automatically assuming. I love that quote. I can't remember who said it. A lot of bad things have happened to me and some of them have actually happened. Yeah. That's not the quote at all.
Something
but
like
you
that.
get,
I know
you
what
get
you mean.
the gist. And it's so true, isn't it? So much of the stuff that we have is just in our head. It never actually happens.
I mean, the brain's amazing because like the human brain can do incredible things. We were just talking earlier about writing books and stuff. I mean, it's incredible sometimes that the human brain can gather all that information and get it down into a book. Or, if you look at, I don't know, sometimes I look at an aeroplane or something and think, Christ, like the human brain created that, or a building, or, sometimes you look at life and you think like a human mind created that. So the mind's incredible, but it's also incredible when it comes to anxiety because it's a brilliant storyteller.
Right.
And what it will do is when it figures out that there's a potential concern. So very often we're getting the stuff that we're getting triggered with in the here and now is very often linked to old stuff.
Okay.
So sometimes we're getting triggered in the here and now because of something that's happened, or work or home life, whatever the context might be. But what that could be doing is triggering something from way back that's never really been fully resolved,
right,
or dealt with. So the whole time we're just kind of trying to manage all of this stuff. But the key thing really...
The brain is incredible.
The brain is incredible.
But it works with anxiety.
And the catastrophic storytelling. So it will then create stories around, okay, say, for example, you were really worried about, I don't know, you're doing your book. So say you were really worried about doing the book.
That's given me fucking anxiety.
So there you go. So
my God.
And it does, doesn't it, when you're doing a book? So if you start to worry about that, then the brain will begin to create a story and say, okay, God, what if you don't finish it in time? And you might hear that thought and think, oh God, that's a really good point. What if I don't finish it in time? And then you start to engage with the brain with that thought. And then what it will do is it will then create another thought. Okay, what if it's rubbish?
Yeah.
What if people don't like it? What if it doesn't sell? What if you don't get to it on time? So it will create story after story after story. And the more you engage with the story, then the bigger the story becomes. And so when people talk about catastrophizing or feeling overwhelmed, that's exactly what's happening. They're getting over-involved with the thought.
Right.
And then it kind of multiplies and it gets exaggerated. Whereas actually when you're working with somebody who's anxious, you're teaching them, okay, this is just a thought.
Right.
And it's an anxious thought and you don't have to get over involved in it. If you can just see it for what it is and not get too involved and just allow it to be and let it pass through, then suddenly you can level out much quicker, whereas most people don't. Most people get involved in the story and take it very seriously and believe every thought to be true.
Yeah, do you know what? That is something that the older I get, the more I learn, is that if I have a day and I wake up and I think, my life is terrible. My life is terrible and I feel so shit and I'm depressed and I'm anxious. I used to really try and delve into it and be like, well, why are you depressed? What is it about your life that you hate? And actually I've learnt that as quickly as that mood comes, it just fucking goes again.
Yeah.
And actually just don't get... Do you know what I love to do? Physical movement. I'll clean my house or I'll paint a fence and then I'll be like, by the time this shitty mood's over... I've actually completed something, you know?
You've moved through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've moved through it. I think it's a powerful example because a lot of people get stuck in the story. So they get distracted by, the mind or the emotion. It happens all the time for all of us. We're all constantly moving in and out of these different states, whether that's a thought state or an emotional state. And if you get over distracted by it, I argue that every emotion has a beginning, middle and end. So it kind of has a natural trajectory. It just has a natural flow through. But what we often do is if the emotion comes up and we don't like it, we jump in and we try and control it or stop it.
Or justify it.
Or justify
it. Logically.
Or work it out.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling this here? Well, maybe you just are. And that doesn't mean that you avoid it or you repress it or you push it down. But for me, it's more about you can be curious about the emotion rather than, I need to work it out. You can be curious about it, but you can also get out of the way. And allow it to pass through. So I often, if I'm working with a client, I'll say, you can be curious about, okay, God, I notice that I'm feeling sad today. That doesn't mean that you are sad. You're experiencing it. It doesn't mean it's who you are. So it's an experience that you're observing and watching and aware of. So you can be curious about that and say, God, I wonder what that's about. But that doesn't mean that you have to work it out. But you can also then get out of the way and say, okay, I'm willing to be around this, but I'm also willing to let it pass through rather than get over-involved. And stew. That in psychology, when we talk about rumination, that's when you start to go over detail again and again and again. I'm feeling rubbish today. Oh my God, my life's shit. This is terrible. And look what happened last week. And look what happened the week before. And then when I was 4, this happened. Yeah. Then before you know it, you're overwhelmed.
Do you know what? That whole idea of just observing a feeling that you're having. And I can't remember what book it was. I've got a book club and every month we're reading new self-development. No, we did it in our self-development book club about 2 or 3 months ago. I don't remember what book it was, but it was saying about how every emotion, rather than, like you say, oh God, I feel sad. I can't feel like this. I've got to like block it. Actually just witnessing it and letting it reach its peak and then go down. I'm 40 fucking years old and I've just learnt that. And it has been such a game changer, not only for myself, but that same daughter that's quite difficult. I sound like such a dick when I say this and I hate myself when I say it, but this is what we learned in the book, is I now say to her, rather than being like, oh, stop crying, like stop, just, what are you making a fuss about? I say, oh no, it sounds like you're feeling angry or sad. And I did say, I do sound like a dick saying this, but when I'm out in public, I'm like, oh God. And I'm like, just show me, how big is your sadness? How big is it? Is it from, and she'll say like, it's from here to that tree. And as soon as I acknowledge the sadness and don't deny it, she's a different child.
She's okay.
She's like, my sadness is from here to that tree. And then like we'll do something and I'll say, how big's your sadness now? And she'll be like, it's this big. And I'm like, well, fuck me.
Just by acknowledging it and allowing it.
Been a parent for 8 years. I've only just learnt this. Isn't it insane?
I don't think it is. I mean, I'm in my 50s now and this is my bread and butter. This is my work. This is what I do. And I think we have therapy. I mean, we have to have, therapy as therapists. It's part of the deal. Oh God, yes.
Is that part of the deal? Do you have to have it?
Well, I mean, not for everyone, but for most therapists it is. I would not have it.
Really?
I think you can't do your job well.
Okay.
And not be in your own therapy because you're working with other people's stuff, so you've got to know what your own shit is.
Yes.
You've got to, and you've just got to be working through that and keeping that separate from what's happening in the room. So I believe it's important. But my own therapist was talking to me a while back and we were talking about that concept of, just kind of not giving yourself a hard time or believing that you've got to have it all worked out.
Yeah.
You get to a point, don't you? You think, God, I should know better. But then stuff comes in and you're, like, we're all learning. Every time, I mean, I don't think any of us ever get to that point where we're totally sorted.
Oh, no.
And I used
Only
to
when
think,
you're dead.
No, but in my 40s, I thought and it's worse. Like, I mean, believe me, it's worse when you're a therapist because then the ego can creep in and tell you that, oh, good, but you should be.
Right.
You should be together. You should have it all worked out. I mean, pardon my French, but it's bollocks really because you can't. That's not human. So I've got a lot better at kind of thinking there isn't that finite point of I've got it worked out, I'm all sorted, I've got it all together. It doesn't exist.
No.
And every time I do, I talk about anxiety. If I get to a point and I think, gosh, everything's going brilliant at the minute, it's kind of
got this cracked.
You just know, don't you, that something's going to move in.
Something's coming.
Or a challenge is going to come in that says, all right, okay, not quite. There's always kind of layers to peel away.
Yeah, and how boring if we didn't have that.
And how do you grow then? I mean, you can't, if you're not been challenged, how do you grow?
Yeah.
And learn and develop. And then I think, if you're doing work like this, then you've kind of got to be willing to put yourself. When I did this book, day one of doing it, I mean, this is the biggest irony ever. So I understand anxiety very well because I struggled with it when I was younger. But, the older I've got, the more I've learned to manage it, understand it. So what I talk about in the book is kind of genuinely, a lot of it's clinical and from expertise and experience, blah, 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 but a lot of it's from my own story. And the first day I sat down to write this book on anxiety, I sat down and I had the biggest wave of anxiety that I've had probably in about 10 years.
Oh, God.
It was just the weirdest thing ever that as you're beginning to write a book on anxiety, the one thing that moves in is this like tidal wave. And like, to be honest, it was a really useful thing to happen because it was like a wake-up call.
Yes.
And this is going to sound a bit woo-woo and I don't want it to, but it was kind of almost like...
We're here for it.
It had to happen.
Yeah.
It was just like kind of a wake-up call. And what I do is I open the book talking about what happened.
Yeah.
I'm set in this library and then suddenly mind is in overdrive. Thoughts start coming in, stomachs in knots, feeling just absolutely overwhelmed. And I thought, okay, well, I might as well begin honestly and talk about it. Yeah. So I think look, none of us are perfect.
No. And I think you're right. I do totally believe that things come along for a purpose. And I think sometimes if you've got your anxiety so under control that you never feel it, I think you might be a bit disassociated when you're writing it and find it hard to remember the struggle. Yeah. It's so funny you say that. Literally yesterday I was writing an extra chapter for my book that they've requested, and it's all about money mindset. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to write a chapter on money mindset. And I was just talking there about how like my money mindset has absolutely transformed, and then I got a £500,000 tax bill. Insane.
Oh
so
my
like,
God.
yeah. So and then literally
on
as
the day you're writing it.
No, like this was like a year ago I found this out.
No.
And one of the biggest payments coming up is like this July, £135,000. And I was like working towards it. And just as I'm writing this chapter, I get a phone call from my accountants. They're like, we forgot to tell you there's an extra £65,000 due in 6 weeks. And I was like, you forgot to tell me about £65,000.
No.
And you know what? It took me back to that thing of being like, I have to remember all of these practices and techniques that I know work. But actually, if everything's all right and you're swimming along and you don't have to use these techniques, how can you really feel it and write it, you know?
Yeah,
So I feel like it's there for a reason. I actually said, thank you, universe, for that £65,000 bill. I'm actually grateful for it because it's going to help me write a better chapter.
No, it's brilliant. It's incredible though how those things work.
Yeah.
And I think as well. I mean, you and I probably think differently in these things, but I think even when you're not only difficult life stuff, but I think even difficult people that you're dealing with, I've got much better at because sometimes you're dealing with people in your life and you're thinking they are really pissing me off, like
Yes.
properly pissing me off and pushing my buttons, and we all have a few of those people in our life.
Yeah.
And your kind of instinct is to want to fight back and put them in their place or whatever the context might be. And I have got much better at kind of think. There's a brilliant line where somebody, I can't remember which book it's from, where someone's saying, if you can see these people as your guru.
Oh, yes.
And I really love that because I do think it's kind of like, what are they trying to teach you? And I'm thinking of somebody difficult that I've been dealing with recently, and when they're acting out, and they're acting out for a reason, and their own reason, nothing to do with me, but it's really pushing my buttons. The challenge then becomes every time is, okay, how can I raise the energy here? How can I go above this?
Yeah.
By not fighting back, by reacting, by trying to teach them, by trying to show them, but almost trying to win the argument.
Yeah.
And kind of react from old stuff. No, you won't treat me that way. No, you won't say that. No, you won't do that. It's kind of, okay, the other option is here. How can I rise above this? That doesn't mean that you're passive and that you take crap in your life, but it means you can depersonalize it and step out.
Yes.
And kind of go above that, kind of almost a different energy.
Yeah. 100%.
And that's powerful.
These dickheads are here to try and teach us something. If you think you don't learn anything good from your amazing friends that are just lovely to you, you learn all of your best coping skills and techniques from the dickheads, don't you? Like that's...
I think they do. And you know, like if you're brave enough sometimes to look at that, often what they're doing is they're showing you aspects of you as well. Because I notice sometimes if somebody is really pushing my buttons, you know, and you get that initial state is to kind of want to think, fucking hell, this is, you know, what, you get all defended and argumentative. And then, like, I think sometimes if you're brave enough to step back and think, okay, what part of me am I seeing there?
Yeah. And not having to prove that you're right. I think when you look at the outcome that you want, I don't know, years ago, my outcome that I wanted was I wanted a point score and prove that I was right. Yeah. And now I don't care. Like, I don't care. I have this saying now that calmness is my superpower. Yeah. And it's almost to the point where I look brain damaged because if I have an argument with someone or one of my exes or something, I'll just be sitting there like, okay, that's fine. And I've got things in my arsenal, but I just choose not.
Choose not to go there.
That's not where I want to spend my energy. And I tell you another absolute game changer is I always think, I wonder if I could look at this through the lens of love. So like even someone that's trying to be difficult with me, how can I look at it that actually, like say you had a boss that was really shitty to you, actually could you look at it through the lens of love of this is their business that maybe they've spent their whole life building and they're just trying to get the best from their employees. When you look at that rather than he's trying to fuck up my life, it gives it a whole different vibe, doesn't it?
I think it does. And like if you struggle, the whole concept of love for some people can be a bit much because, like, you know, if somebody's really hard, they're thinking, how that, you know, if I was working with a client and I said, and they had a husband who was been a complete arsehole to them or they were in difficult circumstances, and I said to them, can you view them through the eyes of love? They're going to come back at me and say, are you kidding me? I mean, I'm taking so much shit day to day. How can I view them through the eyes of love? But I think another way of doing it is if we work with the premise that, you know, they too suffer.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that can be powerful because I do often think most of the time, now there are some people who just behave badly. We know that. There are some people who, there may not be any rhyme or reason to why they do what they do, but some people do behave badly. But I think a lot of people act out their own stuff and they're genuinely struggling.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes if I'm working with somebody, even if it's personally or professionally, it doesn't really matter. If I'm working with somebody and they're really behaving badly or acting out, working on that premise that they too suffer or they too might be struggling means that you're going to approach them very, very differently.
Yeah.
As opposed to showing them up. And it's incredible. I mean, you see this all the time in therapy. If a client, and occasionally you do, in therapy, like, I'm sure most therapists would agree with this. You sometimes have clients who really give it to you. I mean, you're going to...
Really?
Oh, yeah.
As a therapist?
Yeah, you're going to get... I mean, if they're...
I can't imagine that.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, if someone's angry and they're upset and they're carrying a lot of stuff...
Right.
And you're pointing out stuff and you're shining a light on stuff that they don't want to hear or see, you're going to be on the receiving end of fuck you. And that, it does happen. Not all of the time, but, that's part of the deal is that, as a therapist, you're going to be on the other end of negative transference and everything that comes your direction.
Yeah.
And of course, you're never going to fight back. You're going to accept that for what it is, which is okay. Well, this is a moment of struggle and it's a moment of suffering.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get there. And you'd be amazed that, I mean, if you went the confrontational route, then it would fall apart.
Oh, yeah.
And the relationship ruptures.
It will go to shit, yeah.
Whereas actually the minute you kind of go that easier route and you're compassionate and you genuinely just try and create a bit of space around it and let them see that you're not getting into battle with them, then like 99.9% of the times they'll simmer.
Right.
And then what you'll get is you'll get the emotion and you'll get beneath the skin of what's happening for them.
Yeah.
Which is normally sadness, pain, loss, rejection. So even though at the beginning it looks like you're getting a pile of stuff thrown your direction, when you can kind of strip away and get beneath it, then underneath you find something very different going on.
It's all just pain.
Yeah.
I've got a good quote. We are all victims of victims. Do you like that?
You're brilliant with the quotes.
Thank you. I normally never remember them properly or who said them, but I love a quote.
Doesn't matter. We can make them up.
But it is so true, isn't it? When I think about everyone that I'm a victim of, they are all victims in their own rights. I can't look at any one of them and say you are purely an evil person. Like you're just hurting and you haven't resolved it and you're trying to put it on me.
I've got a brilliant one actually that came to mind. Everyone's at fault, but no one's to blame.
Oh, I like that one.
I heard that one years ago, and I remember it really struck me that, particularly if we're dealing with families or, challenges or difficulties in our life, everyone's at fault, but no one's to blame.
I love that. I'm going to use that in my next argument. Well, I don't have arguments anymore. I just sit there and I just let them argue and then I just go, okay, glad you feel like that. Something I love in your book is that you were saying about how anxiety is looked at as this disorder that we need to fix, but actually it's a very normal thing. And as we were talking earlier about letting things pass through you, a very interesting thing I've done over the last, maybe 6 months now, and I would actually urge loads of people to do this if they can, is every morning I send a voice note to my friend Polly and we basically set our intentions for the day verbally. So we'll say in the past tense the kind of day we're going to have. But of course, we do end up also just venting about our problems and how we're feeling as well. And I love doing it with my friend Polly because she's a very aspirational person. She's got an amazing job. She's got great friends. She has a great life, she's the sort of person you look at and you're like, wow, she's winning. Yeah. But what I've learned over 6 months of doing this is that there will be many days where she's like, I feel really shit today. I feel really down. I'm arguing with this person. I'm really anxious about this job. I'm happy today. I'm having a great day. And it's so interesting. And I would urge everyone to do this because we only know ourselves, don't we? Like we don't often have a daily communication with someone about how you're feeling. Yeah. And I think teaming up with somebody, especially someone that you think they've got a good life, not your mate that hasn't got a job that's just sitting watching Jeremy Kyle every day. They're going to be depressed probably, but someone that has a great life and just notice how today they're anxious, today they're happy, today they're busy. It's such a fucking eye-opener.
It is an eye-opener. It's a real eye-opener. I had this weird thing. I haven't said this out loud, actually, but just when you were saying it there, I had this weird thing happen a couple of weeks ago. So the book had come out and it's done really well and, we'd hit the top of the charts and all of that stuff that you hope for when you release a book. And I don't want to say that in any self-congratulatory way, but it was about getting the book out there. I really wanted it to reach lots of people. So there was a real mission with this book. Proper, want as many people as possible to get this book. I really wanted to help. So there was a proper, fire in my belly purpose to get the book out there. Anyway, all of the things that we wish could happen were happening with this book. And then there was this weird moment when, instead of feeling all of this kind of joy and excitement, I had this opposite feeling. And it wasn't even anticlimax. It was kind of borderline fear.
Okay.
Which was really, really bizarre. And the feeling didn't match what should have been happening. So on the outside, on social media, it would have looked incredible in the moment because it was hitting the top of the charts and it was doing brilliantly and all
She's
of this.
on Lorraine.
All of that stuff. All of that stuff, and you think, you look in through that lens and think, fucking hell, incredible. But actually, I was really struggling with I kind of thinking, God, I feel this like fear, unease. I was really fighting it
Imposter
hard.
syndrome?
Wasn't even that.
No?
I felt, that was the thing. I had a really quiet confidence about the content.
Yeah.
And my place. I've been around for 30 years doing physical and mental health. So I kind of solid in my own skin. But then suddenly I was really trying to work it out and I brought it to my own therapy and that suddenly I kind of worked out. It was like there was that fear of kind of being too joyful and that fear of things going well and it then going wrong.
Right.
So it was old stuff about kind of safety and things not working out or being ready to have to manage something difficult.
Yeah.
So it's incredible that in this really big moment, instead of being able to access all of the joy around it, my fear moved in and kind of questioned, okay, just keep an eye here now. Are we sure? Is this going to be okay? So it was an old pattern that had jumped in.
Right.
So I think it can be incredible that we sometimes have these expectations. It's a bit like when people go on holiday, they can get there. They look forward to it forever and then they get there in the first 2 days, they feel like shit.
Yeah.
Because they've stopped and their body quietens and the emotions come up and stuff they haven't dealt with begins to surface. So they're on a beach in Miami expecting to feel on top of the world and they end up feeling different. So I don't think there's any predictability. I think stuff moves in and out the whole time. And we, it's, for me, the interesting thing is just getting to know it and being curious about it and working with it and thinking,
and not suppressing it and just being, like, how interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
How big is your sadness today?
Yeah. No, exactly. And the other thing about that, you were talking about imposter syndrome there was also something about exposure. Because
I was going to say that actually, like suddenly being exposed to a lot more people, is it?
Yeah, it was just about that. Because, my job's varied. I have clinical work, I still see clients, I write the books, I'm doing talks, I'm doing various things. And then there are moments when sometimes you're on projects and you're doing more stuff that's out there and more public. And then there was something about that as well, just about, because I spent most of my early life trying to stay off radar.
Right.
So little gay kid growing up, it was always about not being found out.
Yes.
Not being caught, don't want to be seen. So all of my hard wiring is about staying off radar.
Yeah.
And then ironically, like this stage of my life has brought me to this chapter now where work brings me out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
And then I suddenly realised that as well. It was something about God, my primal instinct is to stay away and hide.
Yeah.
And be kind of back somewhere. I'm more than happy to do the job. But, life's a funny way of teaching as I now do stuff that's a bit more public facing.
Yeah.
And that brings its challenges as well.
And of course, you have to insert your own personal story in it. I think for anything like this, you can't be like, this is what works, but I'm not going to tell you about my own life. Like, you have to. And there is a vulnerability with that. I've definitely divulged things that people have used against me.
I don't think you can do these, but I don't think you can.
Yeah.
Because people, why would people listen? I mean, you can quote all your training and psychology expertise and all of that there, but actually at the end of the day, we are human beings. I mean, we're both human beings in a room, talking about life and navigating our way through life and navigating our way through anxiety. If you kind of try and hide that part of yourself, when I started doing all of this stuff, and particularly with this book, there are kind of three premises I always work from that I'll always use either the professional evidence and psychology evidence and training, all of that stuff. It has to be included. But I'll also include my own story because that has to be there. I can't exclude that. And then I spent 10 years working with people who were dying in my early career.
Oh my God.
As a palliative care specialist.
Oh, wow.
And that taught me lots about life and
I bet.
evaluating stuff and what matters and what's important. So if I'm working or we're doing a book or a talk or whatever I'm doing, or I'm talking about anxiety, I'll always work with the three platforms in my head. I'm never just working from a singular platform. I'm working with these three areas.
Yeah.
I'm thinking all I can do is deliver what I know and what I've experienced and try and incorporate that into the work.
Yeah, and it shows. I love it. I think, people need that personal element. They need to see your struggle and see that you've used it for yourself. And also how interesting that, like you say, 50 years later, you can still reach a new level in your career or whatever. And those same things. Another quote, healing goes in circles. You never get away from that. This is the worst. But healing goes in circles. You always arrive back to the same point, but you respond to it differently.
Brilliant. Don't know who said that, but it sounds great.
Some fucker on Instagram. I saw it. I was like, I love it.
All of our quotes will be they'll be ripped apart and say, that's not the quote.
It's not at all what was said, but we get the gist.
Yeah, we get the message.
It is true though, isn't it? I found that I've been doing hardcore self-development for 5 years. So I've read, what's 5 times 12? Hang on, don't tell me. 60? 60. I've read 60 self-development books in 5 years. Can you imagine what that does to a person? But not just read it, done it with a book club, done all the exercises, really immersed ourselves in it. And it is this thing I've noticed, you're never fixed. You're never fine. You're never happy, but it's just you come back, these same things will repeat round, but you respond to it differently. You have new tools, you have new techniques, Yeah,
you do. You learn. I'll tell you one of my favourite things. You've got me woo-woo today, but this is a bit woo-woo.
Yeah.
I don't know why I always apologise for the woo-woo stuff.
You shouldn't.
No, the older I get, I was talking to a mate the other day and I was saying about this, the more I do this work, you can't really deny. This is I was really excited about coming on this today because I normally don't have conversations that are around energy and manifesting and this different stuff. Sometimes I end up in podcasts or conversations that are way more mainstream.
Yeah.
But one of the things I did in this book, there was a chapter on energy, which I think is really, really important. But I just think that there's this brilliant image of, it's from a book, but this guy talks about, if you think of a lake, and it's just really, really still. And you look at that lake and it's still, and someone throws a stone into the lake, immediately what will happen is you'll get loads of ripples.
Yeah.
And that's like life, isn't it? Sometimes things can just be really level and still, and then out of nowhere, one of the kids plays up or someone pisses you off or you get an email that fires you up. And then that's the stone been thrown into water. And what most of us do is the minute the ripples start to occur, we jump in the lake.
Right.
Believing that we can fix it and we can get rid of the ripples.
Oh.
And actually, if you think of what happens then when you get into the water, because you're scrambling to try and get rid of these ripples, you make them worse.
Yeah.
And you actually create more turbulence and it just becomes more chaotic. And it is that thing about sometimes the recognition, right? There's a load of ripples around today, or I don't know, you can use whatever analogy you want, or it feels turbulent here, it's a bit stormy. And it's about, okay, what would be the most helpful thing? And I think often the most helpful thing, and this is years of experience here, is getting out of your own way.
Right.
The more you can get out of your own way.
How?
Because I think most people, when they're dealing with difficulties, they're operating from their old story. Their past, the things that have gone wrong, old traumas, old experiences, old rejections, old hurts. When people are navigating through difficulties in their life, I think what they do is they immediately then go to the story and they act from that story.
So their own narrative of look, this has happened 5 times in the past.
Yeah, this is.
I'm right, you're wrong.
This is just typical.
Right.
This is what always happens to me. This is wrong. This is not fair.
Yeah.
So then they respond and they react from that attachment to story. Whereas actually, I think when you free up from your story and say, look, very often the things that happen to us, regardless of what they were, even though they feel very personal, they're often not.
No.
So the person that treated you badly or did something wrong to you, or the experience you had, even though it might have been awful and terrible and devastating and traumatic, very often when you really strip back and say, but it wasn't personal,
right.
It wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
It happened to you and it probably shouldn't happen to you, and it would have been ideal if you hadn't have been through this experience. But even though it feels very personal, it wasn't your fault. And I think often what we do is we personalise stuff. And if you can teach people, it's one of the things I talk a lot about in the book, if you can depersonalise stuff, and if you can start to relate. See, I don't treat anxiety like it's a physiological thing happening to you. Even though you've got all of the chemical stuff, you've got the thoughts, the emotions. I think your anxious self, and I talk about it a lot, your anxious self is just like this scared little person inside you.
Yeah.
That is around, and most people treat that part of themselves like it's an enemy or a bad thing. And the first section of the book, the focus is on you get to know that part of self. You never push it down. You never reject it. You never run from it. You get to know it and you work with it.
Okay.
And you negotiate with it because it's a part of you. It's a like little scared being within you.
What would that look like in your actual life?
Depends. I mean, symptomatically, what it looks like is the racing thoughts, the catastrophizing, the fear-driven worry, the knots in the stomach, the chest beating, the behaviours, the bottle of wine every night to try and soothe. That's what it looks like in reality. But I think for most people is when you take them out of all of that there and say, okay, what's happening for you? They'll often say, I just feel scared. I mean, I sometimes do anxiety groups online and stuff. And when I'm working with people, I get them to do this thing, which is really powerful. And I say, I want you to like think about you're sitting on a wall and you're aware that you're anxious, and I want you to imagine your anxious self, whatever that looks like, just coming up and sitting beside you. I want you to just notice what happens to you. And most people, when they do it, get really emotional because they've never allowed that part of themselves to come alongside them.
Right.
Because for most people's like what most of us do is we push down. We're made up of many parts as human beings, and what we tend to do is we push down the parts that we don't like, or we reject them, or we try and get rid of them. And I think with the anxious self, we do exactly the same thing.
Right.
You say to people, what would it be like to allow that part of self just to, to be alongside you? They get really upset and they get really emotional because they've never, I mean, you're a mum, so you were talking about your kids and stuff. Can you imagine if one of your kids come up and they really needed you and they were genuinely scared and they were struggling, and if you said to him, piss off, and you didn't respond to him, can you imagine the impact it would have on them?
And we're doing that to ourselves.
We do that to ourselves regularly.
All the time.
Every human being I work with.
Fucking hell.
Every human being I work with, when they come in and they start describing their life and how they treat themselves, that's what most people are doing.
This is so interesting when you put it like that, of like, it's a part of yourself that, like, it's a little bit like inner child work as well. Like, there's that part of yourself.
Similar.
You've got your inner child, you've got your, maybe your sexual self, you've got your anxious self, like all these parts of your whatever it is, who the fuck knows what it is. But actually, I can feel in my own life. So say like I was anxious about the book, which it does give me anxiety. Or say no, my worst anxiety is around the children just like bullying me every day. Like when, because it's horrible. Like when I wake up in the morning and I feel that sense of dread and that anxiety, instead of just being like, fucking come on, Fran. Like I could actually be like, oh, I acknowledge, tell me if this is wrong. But I could say like, to myself, I acknowledge that I'm feeling like this and I'm allowed to feel like this because I'm actually going through a very stressful motherhood where people are being horrible to me every day. And actually by just acknowledging and saying, thank you for trying to protect me, that is your job. But actually like I can work on some techniques.
Yeah. Or you could even think of it as well. I mean, I know we've been laughing about it, but you're saying, oh, I wake up and I feel anxious.
This is genuinely my life.
Yeah, the kids are bullying me. I mean, maybe another way of thinking about it is, because if you think, I mean, and this is the same for all of us, if we then think, okay, I was talking to someone yesterday and I was doing a radio interview yesterday and they were saying about, what do you think about awful April?
What's awful April?
Well, apparently it's a thing.
What?
Apparently it's
I
a
love
thing
April.
at the minute. Yeah, because of the economy and various things.
Come on.
It's been and he said, what do you think of that? And I said, well, look, if you premise anything is awful, well then the kind of expectation is that it's going to be awful. And I think you were laughing about the kids and talking about the kids and thinking, oh my God, I've been bullied by them. What I'd say, like, if you are genuinely thinking that, oh my God, I feel bullied by my kids. Then,
just by one of them.
Yeah, the experience will be, God, I'm feeling bullied. But actually, I'd say if you reframe that, it could be actually one of my kids is trying to get my attention in a very specific way.
Okay,
Then
I like that.
It becomes something really different.
That straight away feels very different.
Yeah, so
she's not trying to bully
she's
me.
Not bullying
she's not
you.
trying to
she's
make my life horrible.
She's trying to get to you in a different way.
Okay.
So it's kind of like she's found this route to try and get you to respond to her, to see her, or to, let me sure you're an amazing mum. But it'll be, kids are kids and they will find ways of trying to get an inroad.
Yeah.
So it could be that when she's acting out and it feels like bullying to you, it's kind of like, all right, okay, she's using this acting out to try and get me to respond to her. So again, like, I mean, I know it sounds cliched, but it's that curiosity about, God, I wonder what it is she needs.
Yeah.
Or wonder how I approach her. You play around with the approaches and stuff. I mean, this is the great thing about all of this here. There's always alternatives. There's always ways, different ways of looking at it.
I'd say I am very proud of my parenting. I feel like I've always said like, stop crying. And don't get me wrong, there's still days where if it's the 500th outburst of the day, I will be like, seriously, no more.
Yeah.
I'm done. And I pretend to walk out the front door. I'm going now. Bye. The milkman can look after you. But like on the whole, it is just through really small techniques like the one we talked about, just actually acknowledging the sadness, acknowledging the anger, asking how big it is. That's the only tool I've got in my box, to be honest.
You can tell you're a brilliant parent. The fact that you even stop to reflect and think about your parent. And I mean, look, I'm not a parent. I'm a dog parent.
You're so lucky.
I've got a dog. I mean, that's my parent. And then, Christ, it comes with challenges.
Yeah. Even a dog. Stressful.
And they push your boundaries and test you and, waking you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you come down, they've done a shit in the carpet.
Oh, no.
All of that stuff.
Not at 5 years old, surely.
Not at all.
Oh, God.
So you kind of have all of the, and of course you're like, come on, I just want to get asleep, or pulling on lead, or just not doing what he's told. I mean, it's just like, we're human beings at the end of the day, whether it's a kid or a dog or a family member, people do, we're flesh and blood. We get wound up, we get agitated, it'd be abnormal.
Yeah.
Not to have any of those responses.
I would love to do a quick fire. We could go backwards and forwards. What makes you anxious? I'll go first, scrolling on my phone.
What makes me anxious? Jesus, there's so many things.
This isn't very quick
not
fire.
feeling, no, but I'm trying to think what, not feeling in control.
Oh, procrastination? Because that's like not feeling, do you know what I mean? For me, when I'm procrastinating on something, I get so anxious.
I'm a huge perfectionist. Huge perfectionist. I really like order. I like to know what things are happening. So what would probably make me most anxious is a sense. Have I got up? This is not quick fire here. We're rambling again. And we should do it again.
We've digressed.
Anyway, we'll get there, I promise. Like, if I get up and I know what my day looks like, and I kind of think, right, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing, and I could have some order or predictability, then I'm good. If I get a day when I look and I think, God, I haven't been there before, shit, I haven't met this person, this is new, shit, that's a big gig. The kind of not knowing and the unpredictability, that sort of not feeling in control.
Yes.
Is because I like to do well, I like to do my job well, it matters to me. So that would be.
Do you plan your week out on a Sunday night?
I've got better at doing it.
I love doing that.
I've got
it's
much
changed
better.
my life.
Yeah, much better at doing it. I used to be a lot more chaotic.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, oh, Christ, look what I've said yes to tomorrow.
I said yes to 2 things at once.
Yeah.
I've missed that appointment.
No. I used to do that. And but the thing is, I would always show up because my perfectionist wouldn't let me not show up.
Yeah.
And then I'd get to Friday night and be absolutely knackered. Whereas I'm much better now. I've got and this is a getting older thing. I'll look and I'll think, right, what am I doing? My other half always says to me, what you doing the day before? What have you got the next morning? So I'm much better now. I get to Sunday evening. I won't just look at Monday or Tuesday or whatever. I'll check what I'm doing the day before and the day after. And if there's stuff that's like really high energy and there's too many things happening at one time, I'll balance it all out a bit better.
Okay.
I'm much better at doing that.
Yeah, I love that. I think no to the chaotic energy. Planning my week out on a Sunday night is a gift to my future self so that I am less anxious through the week and I know I'm not going to forget anything and I just fucking love it. So I wonder, for people listening that have common...
What about our quickfire?
Oh, sorry, back to what gives you anxiety? Oh, I tell you what, the fear after a night out. Oh. What about when you're at a party and all of a sudden you're like, I want to go home. I don't want to be here with you people.
Well, do you know why the fear is? There's a chemical reason for that. So, do you drink? Do you take a drink?
Oh yeah,
you like a drink?
I love it.
So I mean, I can these days 2 glasses of wine and I'm gone. It's like ridiculous.
Nice and cheap for you.
For an Irishman, I mean, disgrace to my country. But I did like the worst hangovers.
Yeah. I've got a trick. Do you want to know? Yeah. There's a pill called Nux Vom, and it's a homeopathic because I get awful hangovers to the point where I almost stop drinking. But nah. And you take one before you start drinking, one when you get home. And you don't have a hangover.
There you go. You heard it here first. Honestly, in this podcast on anxiety.
It's homeopathic. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, when you have a drink, you've got a thing called GABA receptors.
Right.
I won't get into the science too much, but when we drink, our GABA receptors go up, so they increase.
Right.
And they basically that's why we feel less inhibited. We kind of feel more free. We're a bit more relaxed because these GABA receptors impact these inhibitory receptors where we feel much more free, much more open.
Right.
We get up the next day, the GABA receptors, it's kind of like a pendulum swing, so they then reduce because they've been elevated because of the alcohol.
Do they reduce further beyond what they normally are?
So they go.
Oh, no.
So it's like a pendulum swing. So instead of kind of having your more regulated levels, your normal levels,
Right.
they kind of then go the other direction. So that more beer fear, whatever you want to call it, is because your GABA receptors are probably...
I've never heard anyone explain it. I just thought the fear was because you did something awful.
No, chemically it's there's a change in your body. So, and then people then say, oh, I kind of hair of the dog or whatever they've done to kind of regulate themselves again. But it's basically chemically they've kind of adjusted back to equilibrium again. But we've kind of got these pendulum swings that happen.
Okay.
Go a bit of science or...
I loved that because now, next time I get the fear, I won't think, oh no, did I get my tits out in the bar? Actually, it's fine. It's just my GABA receptors.
My GABA receptors. There
it's
you
fine.
go.
Do you know what? When I had my twins, they nearly killed me. It was awful. In lockdown, I lost so much weight. I was so skinny because I breastfed and I was honestly like a little rack going out. And I celebrated a year of surviving twins, went out with my friends to the local village pub, literally passed out because I drank so much because I was so skinny, I wasn't used to it. Got my tits out in the pub, in the local village pub. The next day when I woke up, I was like, no, that was genuine, the fear. Like, that was genuine. That was validated. Like, I should have been fearful.
That was a low point.
Oh, never again. Okay, so our quick fire of what causes anxiety. What about a quick fire of what we do to reduce, like to treat it, I guess. For me, I go on my treadmill. If I receive an email or a message from someone that really triggers me, and I have a couple of people in my life that trigger me, I get on my treadmill and I move. I move.
Idea.
Is that a good one?
It's a brilliant one because for most people will hold anxiety in their body somewhere.
Yeah, like this. And
chest, stomach, head. Some people think like they've been choked. One of the most powerful things you can do is if you can deactivate the sense of threat in the body. Now, again, I'm going to get a bit scientific here. So when the body's in a primal state of threat, so basically when the body's anxious, there's a brilliant expression, the body keeps a score. So anxiety holds itself in the body. So if you can deactivate the sense of threat in the body, what that immediately does is it will send a message to the brain saying there's no threat.
Right.
So you've got the right hand brain, you've got a part called the amygdala, which is almost like a fire alarm. And when you're anxious, it's activated. Okay, it's working harder than it needs to. So the body primes up. So that's why we get the symptoms in the body. So if you relax the body, whether it's through exercise, meditation, breathing techniques, grounding, whatever you use, when you deactivate the body, sends a message to the brain, amygdala deactivates,
right,
which is like switching off an alarm, and your prefrontal cortex, which is a more rational part of the brain, then comes back online again.
Okay.
So you've kind of almost got that by working with the body, you switch off that alarm in the brain, and you then introduce and you kind of bring back online your prefrontal cortex.
And just by walking, that will do that?
You can do
like
it by moving, exercise, and anything that you feel kind of discharges that over. For me, I'll go for a swim. If I'm feeling really overwhelmed or I've had a big day, I'll sometimes just go for a swim in the evening.
Nice.
I'll have a cold shower or something.
Oh, no.
And I just, no. But it does bloody work.
Yeah.
And that sense of just kind of almost kind of re-regulating the body can be a really powerful thing to do.
Is that as well, because you get that influx of cortisol and adrenaline, is it physically getting it out of the body?
You can do. You are physically burning it off.
Yeah.
In some way. But for other people, breath work, for example, we know that breath work can do very, very similar things.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are not into this stuff. Another powerful thing is just that repetition of a mantra. So when you're repeating a mantra, it's similar to meditation, because when you're just repeating a phrase over and over and over again, and then your mind gets distracted and goes to your thought, and then you bring it back to the mantra repetition.
Right.
That kind of just repetitive nature helps quieten the noise in the brain. So all of these things can be incredibly useful. But the other thing I would add too with anxiety is that's, again, never just one thing. So it's about, movement's good. We know from all the research, getting out into nature, even just walking around the park for 10 minutes can make a difference. The foods that you put into your body, so anxiety in itself is an inflammatory condition. We know that more and more and more. The science is pointing to the fact that it's inflammatory. So if you're eating a load of food that are like high in sugar, high in fat,
I love all of those.
You're inflaming the body.
Yeah.
And, more and more and more, we're talking about the kind of connection between gut and brain.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're inflaming your gut, you're inflaming your brain. So, you know, if you're trying to get your anxiety regulated a bit, keep an eye on what's going into the body. Keep an eye on the way you talk to yourself, your boundaries, the people you have in your life, situations you're in. If you're doing stuff in your life, and this always gets a bit controversial, but I really wholeheartedly believe that if you're doing stuff in your life that doesn't make you happy and you don't like, you're going to be anxious. And I know some people will say, well, yeah, that's all well and good. You know, I have to work. You don't have to be in a job that makes you miserable and have knots in your stomach. Find an alternative, because there will be an alternative somewhere.
Yeah.
If you're willing to look for it. So, I mean, it's never just one thing. It's multifaceted.
Okay.
That was more than a quick fire, but
That was, yeah.
that was a lot of quick.
We've got lots of tips
Lots
there.
of quick.
Do you know something else I love as well? Crying. Because I heard that when you cry tears of anger or sadness, I don't remember either, there's actually cortisol in the tears.
Yeah,
so actually you're releasing it. Please let me cry. Was that true? Can I just sit and cry?
I describe it differently. I describe it like it's, I mean, there's a number of things happen when you cry, but I think it's like releasing a valve.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of...
Isn't it weird that water comes out your eyes?
So it's kind of like when you do cry, you kind of get that almost kind of decompression.
Because you get that feeling when you're like, keep it in. When you're trying to sing that Adele song and you're like, you're going to cry. And then when you release it, it is a release.
It's a decompression of sorts, isn't it? Yeah, it is. So a good old cry is useful.
Okay, I'll continue to cry then. Yeah. That's good. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I do. I move, I get on my treadmill, I cry. And yeah, just acknowledging those feelings.
Do you mind me asking, so when you get anxious, do you give yourself a hard time? Do you have that sort of critical voice in your head saying?
Sometimes. Yeah. I find, I don't know if this is really anxiety, I guess it is, but as a single working mother, I feel like my nervous system can never stop. Like I feel like, and I think I'm still in survival mode from the pandemic. Ever since, to be honest, ever since I've been a single mother and I've been the only income, there's been this thing of like, right, you've got to work. Like, and when my twins were born, I used to just work every night till like 1 a.m. when they were asleep, recording podcasts and then feeding all day. Like I didn't stop. And now 4.5 years later, I'm still there. Yeah. And actually just in the last couple of weeks, I don't even know where I heard this, but I was like, I think I need to take physical actions to tell my nervous system we're not in a hurry and we're not overwhelmed. Yeah. And it's really weird, but I will just do things. So I'll purposely go and spend 10 minutes like cleaning my kitchen, or I'll put all the books back on my bookshelf that I thought I had no time to do. Or do you know what I mean? Like go around and water the flowers in the garden. Yeah. Just to tell my nervous system, you're not overwhelmed, you're not in survival mode, you're not in a rush, and it works. Yeah. It does work.
I think that's important. And I think a lot of people, that kind of post-hangover from the pandemic is still quite real for a lot of people, in that sense of just that treadmill of just keep going. A mate of mine's actually read this book, and he said something really interesting to me, and he said he just read it out of curiosity, would never have described himself as being anxious at all. Right. And he read it and he said, Christ, he said, this has been a real eye-opener. And I said, oh, why? And he said, well, one, I really liked it. And I said, well, that's good. And he wasn't being polite because he'd tell me about his shit, this particular friend. And he said, the second thing I realised was, he said, I am totally anxious, but I wouldn't have used that language. Oh. He said, I'm just on overdrive the whole time. I don't stop. Right. My mind doesn't stop. I'm always on the next thing. I never really enjoy anything because I'm just...
That's it. You never enjoy anything because you're just...
And he said, I wouldn't have described myself as an anxious person. And he said, and I read this book, and he said, every chapter I'm thinking, that's me.
Interesting.
I do that. So I think that's a really interesting thing too, is that people say all the time, oh, everyone's talking about being anxious. I don't think everyone is talking about being anxious. Some people are. But I think there are people, particularly blokes, to be honest. I think there are a lot of blokes who are anxious and they don't use that language. They will use different types of language, but actually when you break it down, I sometimes have clients who come in to therapy and they'll rock up and, you know, and you've worked out within 20 seconds that their anxiety is on the roof. Right. Like that you can feel it and the speed at which they're talking, and you're watching how they're processing and their body language. Everything just tells you quickly. You've worked out. Yeah. When you're working as a therapist, you're thinking about speed all the time. So if I'm working with somebody who's anxious, my instinct is to immediately slow them down. Right. If I'm working with somebody who's depressed or has something in and around the depression, low mood, demotivation, your instinct is to work on speed to
That's interesting. I've never heard
you're
that.
working. It's a kind of vibrational energy thing, isn't it? So
Yeah.
you're an anxious person. Your instinct will be to slow them down. Somebody who's kind of more depressed or demotivated or dealing with kind of deeper sadness, you're trying to raise them.
Right. Yeah.
In some
of
ways.
course.
And this person came in to me and they were like talking. What they brought to therapy was not about anxiety. It was about performing better and feeling more motivated. It's kind of like we can park all that shit, thanks very much, because can we talk about your anxiety?
You've got a bigger issue.
And then the person was like, I'm not anxious. I thought, okay. And then when you start to dig and explore, their anxiety's on the ceiling.
Yeah. I suppose it is a relatively, not a new term, but it is something that maybe wasn't around years ago as much, because I do truly believe, like, looking at your phone, constantly having your emails on you, constantly having people having access to you all the time. This is not something we used to live with.
Like all the recent stuff, like some of the recent books and stuff that are coming around dopamine hits and stuff. We know from all the science that, the scrolling, the being online too long, all of that stuff. You do. You get those hits. You get quick.
You can feel it in your body, can't you?
You get those
horrible.
quick hits. But then what happens for most people is that after a few minutes, the hit drops off pretty quickly. You do. I don't know about you, but I've tried to get much better on social media naturally because of work you have. I didn't use social media until about 5 years. I didn't know what a hashtag was.
Oh Lord,
that's the level I was at. So you can imagine then when I did my first book and the publisher said, "Oh, what's your social media presence?" I was like, I didn't even know what it meant.
Oh my goodness.
Like,
are you on TikTok?
No, I'm on Instagram. I do Instagram.
Yeah.
I have a nice little community there, which is hilarious considering like I had zero clue how to do videos or anything. We're talking about total amateur here. I think I had about 50 followers on Facebook when I started off.
Wow.
A couple of friends and like a little small close unit, and then suddenly we're publisher like, oh, you're going to have to start doing, as a middle-aged man, like entering this world and saying, no, there's no way around it. You're going to have to become more visible on
You're going to have to start doing TikTok dances.
Well, I haven't gone near TikTok. I just kind of think
I'm too
I just
old.
can't. I can't do it. Do it.
Do you know what? Everyone keeps saying TikTok's where it's at. I'm like, I don't want to spend any more of my life online. I'm trying to actively spend less of it online.
I respect people who do it, but when I do go on, it's really. I was doing something the other week, and it was a Friday night, funny enough, and I was working until. I think I was probably working until about 10:30, and I genuinely hadn't stopped. It was just like ridiculous, and it was just because what it's like when you've got a book coming out.
Yeah.
There are periods when you just know non-negotiably it's going to be a lot, and you kind of got to ride that storm for a while. And I got to about 10 o'clock on the Friday night, and I went on to TikTok, and it was almost like everyone I knew was living their best life.
Oh.
They were all out with a drink and partying, and somebody was in Miami, and I could feel this internal, when you just notice your energy dropping.
Yeah.
And I was kind of thinking, bloody hell, everyone's out and they're, and I just didn't have it. Now you can feel that almost self-pity and then you just catch yourself in that moment thinking, come on.
Yeah.
You get a snapshot of someone's life.
A snapshot, and it's consolidated as well.
And it's just like, none of this is real. And I kind of think, I'm a grown middle-aged man, and you see how easy it is to get pulled into that momentary, why aren't I out on a Friday night drinking? Why I'm working too hard, I'm working too much. So I kind of think, if you think of younger kids who are going on and stuff, and they get pulled into it, and they believe that the celebrities or the influencers, they believe wholeheartedly that these people have the answer to life and that they are happy. And the reality is I work with people from right across the board, have done all of my career. And I sometimes work with people who have phenomenal, the most phenomenal success you can imagine, whether they're an A-list actor or a pop star or a huge reality star or a CEO of a multi-billion-pound organisation.
Winning at life.
I work with people who are at the top of their game in most areas, sport. And what I've discovered is and this is fascinating, it's not new information and it's not new news, but what you discover is when you're working with people is that the same issues are there for us all. So actually the money, the success, the validation, the numbers, the level of fame, it doesn't matter what it is. Ultimately, human beings are human beings. And they're still in those same minds, same emotional states, same challenges, same questions. And it can be that even though the level of success gets incredible, there's always someone that they're looking up to thinking, but they're bigger or they're better. And you're like, you've got 50 million followers or whatever.
Yeah.
And but there's always that desiring and wanting. And I kind of think that is one of the things that the older I get, I really, really see that it's actually, God, it's kind of almost like an entrapment of sorts where we believe that the feeling better and the doing good is going to be met from the external stuff. You know, where actually I think a lot of the time that in my world and my work, it's kind of like it's often not the case. I'm fascinated actually about the manifesting stuff because sometimes I do interview and they say, what do you think of manifesting and stuff? And I'm fascinated by it because anything that's about energy, and I know you talk about the law of attraction and various things. And my take on it is, I think, you know, I'm never against people manifesting anything. If people are about changing their lives and improving their lives, hats off to you, go for it. I guess I'm often interested in the question, why are you manifesting? So it's kind of, I often think, be careful what you manifest, because if the manifesting is about a belief that when I have X, Y, and Z, I'll be happier, I think there might be some degree of truth in that. But if the manifesting, say it's wealth, fame, whatever the context might be, if you're manifesting that with the belief that that's going to sort out the internal stuff that's never been resolved, I have never once in my entire career see that work.
Absolutely. And do you know what? I saw a really interesting quote, another quote on
Instagram.
The
quotes in today, aren't we?
And it was saying the more healed...
It's going to be 12.
I'm going to have to do a million citations.
A dozen quotes.
But it was so good. It's Jordan Stevens, who is my secret celebrity crush as well. Oh, God, I love him.
I was on his party. He's a really nice guy.
He just is perfection to me. Well, he said, the more you heal, the less ambitious you become. And I read that quote. So true, isn't it? Like, actually, I don't hate that part of myself, because there was a time where I was building this podcast where I had a lot to fucking prove. I needed to flex on some hoes. Do you know what I'm saying? I needed to fucking show some people what was up and how good my life was going to get. But I couldn't stay there. That couldn't be my reason for being.
It was part of the drive.
It was part of the drive. And and exactly what Jordan says, the more you heal, the less ambitious you become. And I certainly have experienced that in my own life, where I'm like, I don't need to prove it. I don't really give a shit, which is an amazing place to be. But also, I kind of like it sometimes when someone's a bit horrible to me and I'll be like, I'm going to fucking show you. Yeah. Like, I love it. Such fuel.
I'll give you another quote. This is my quote, actually. I think it's my quote.
Is it? You don't even know.
I did say it on Instagram the other day. So I was thinking about, you know, when you're doing a project and it's full of yes and no's and highs and lows and all of that stuff. And I had this thought that when you get a no, and we do get no's, and I think they're really important because they do stabilise you and people have a right to say no. But it's really interesting when you're doing stuff when sometimes you're told, and I've had this where you've told you're not big enough. Now, whatever that means. And it could be you're not big enough and it's a well-being platform, but it's kind of like, well, if you're not famous enough, but actually the platform is about well-being.
Yeah.
So 30 years of expertise in physical and mental health isn't big enough because I haven't been a reality star or whatever they call it. So I often find those conversations really interesting, and my ego manages it and I let it go. But I think if you turn the word no around, what you get is on.
Oh, where are we going?
And that was my quote. Well, my quote was that, you know, a no doesn't have to be a negative. It doesn't have to be a kind of a deflation, an annihilation, a disappointment. A no can be a reason to then switch that to an on.
Okay.
So it's kind of like it's bring it on. So if you're going to say no to me, that's absolutely fine.
I love
Respect that, really appreciate that. But actually, I mean, I'm it's spirit of honesty. I mean, I had a no with this last book, and that was absolutely, I respected that.
What, a publisher?
No. Yeah, it was it wasn't, you know, it was not for them, and I really respected that decision. But actually, it was like, when you know wholeheartedly something's right for you,
yes,
you kind of think, okay, well, I'll use that no to turn that around into an on, and so I think that's healthy, and it's not about fighting back or arrogance, because I do think sometimes you have to respect that what's right for you may be wrong for someone else. But actually, if you wholeheartedly, you know, like in the pit of your stomach, I've got really good. This is the thing about getting older that I'm really enjoying. I really trust my own instincts a lot more now.
Yes.
You know, when you get that, nothing will convince you. When you get this visceral core of your being knowing, no, this is right for me.
Doesn't need logic. Don't need to explain it.
It's there.
Just like, nah.
Yeah.
Drop
and
me
even
out.
like sometimes as well, I don't know if you ever get this. Sometimes I'll be asked to do stuff and every fibre of my being says no.
Interesting.
And it might be it's a brilliant opportunity, or you should do this could be amazing. And you just, every fibre of my being saying, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I've got much better at saying, I'm going to pass on that one. Really appreciate the offer. But it's kind of, I think for me, I guess that one of the complicated things is, I think when you're doing work like this, is that you're using platforms that sometimes the ethos, you know, the kind of the ethos and values might go really contrary to the work you're trying to do. And it's always a really difficult one to balance, because it's like, if I don't stay in lane doing my job, which is essentially what I'm doing, is just doing my job. This book about anxiety is doing my job as a therapist, but using a different platform.
Yeah.
If you start to go off lane in any way, shape or form, or if you start to become a different version, like I've had it all, you know, like I've been in rooms with people and the conversations about how do we make you more relevant? And you're like, I'm in the fucking room. I'm here. I'm a middle-aged man. What do you want me to do? Put on a pair of Speedos
Oh
and,
my God.
you know.
Get an
do it.
OnlyFans.
Yeah. Past
Might
that.
be a market for that. You never
There
know.
might be, but I mean, do let us
Just
know.
really anxious wanking.
Let us know.
Could be. You never
Let me know
know.
your thoughts. But, you know, it's all of that stuff, and that is the world we live in. You know,
Yeah.
like when those conversations can happen in front of you, because you know we live in a world that is about numbers, success, fame, all of that. So for me, what I've learned is, you know, and I think this is an important message for anybody listening as well, is, you know, like stay in lane.
Yeah.
Like I really think that is probably one of the most important things in life generally. You know, stay in your lane, because the minute you start going off,
Maybe trying to chase what you think's going to be popular.
yeah,
Or what you think's going to work.
or what's going to get you accepted.
Yeah.
Because the minute, like it's kind of the oldest kind of wisdom in the book, but the minute you compromise your own integrity, you're fucked.
Oh, yeah.
You lose that, then you're it doesn't matter what you've got around you. If you lose that, or you hand that over to somebody, you're not left with much.
And people can tell if you're being insincere. People can tell that straight away. And like you say, when you're manifesting as well, I always think like, is this something that I genuinely want? Is this something that's going to make my life better? I drive around in an old Nissan that has got so many bumps on it. And literally so many people say to me, why haven't you bought a new car? I'm like, because it isn't in alignment with what I give a shit about. Like, I genuinely don't want people to see me pull up and be like, oh, look at her car. Like, no, if you bump into me, an old man bumped into me the other day with a caravan, and he was all panicked. And I was like, look at my car. Do you think I give a shit, Dave? Do you think I care? Let's just move on, shall we? And he was like, oh, thank you so much. Can I get you anything? I was like, I don't want anything. I just want to move on with my day without calling my insurers. So that's my value. I don't want to call my insurers. That I want my time, not worrying about a little scratch on my fucking...
It's choosing your battles, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, we've gone a bit off piste. I feel like to round this conversation up, we have to just link it back to the manifesting, the fact that anxiety really is the lowest, well, along with fear, is one of the lowest vibrational feelings we can have, isn't it? And so by treating your anxiety, you are going to be able to raise your vibration, spend less time in a negative, low vibrational pace, and manifest your goddamn dreams, basically.
Do you know what I think? I think if you work with your anxiety as a negative in your life, so if you treat it as the enemy, if you treat it as a wrong thing, if you resist it, if you fight it, then I agree. I think it becomes that low vibrational energy. It just becomes a darker state. I think if you can raise that up and you start to treat your anxious self as a really valid part of you, and a part that's never to be rejected or to be run from, then what you do is you start to create a new relationship with it, and then I think it shifts into something very, very different.
Okay.
And the energy changes, and it then becomes something that you can actually work with and use for the betterment of your life. So your anxiety becomes almost like this ally and this protector, and something that's there for you that you energetically charge and work with. I use it every day of my life. I mean, if I'm doing a big event and I walk out and there are like, it could be 500 or 1,000 people there and it's a speaking event, I can bet my bottom dollar 30 seconds before I go on, my anxious self will present itself.
Oh boy, yeah. Then what do you do?
And it will create a story. And what I, talking about this energetic shift. So if I see that as a wrong thing or a bad thing, I would immediately deflate and my energy would drop.
Right.
And I would probably give a really mediocre talk. Whereas if
and is that literally just like, oh, don't be anxious. You've done this before, that kind of thing.
So what I do is when I know, and it'll be very obvious, it'll be like a thought, or it'll be the kind of jitters in my stomach, and I think, all right, okay, my anxious self, so it's an ally, it's a protector, it's a useful part of me, has stepped alongside, and I know why it's there. It's because it experienced a lot of fear when it was young and learned how to guard and protect. So what I do is I bring the part with me onto stage.
Okay.
Visibly, like literally in my head, I bring that part of me. It's like kind of bringing a toddler by the hand
and then what
onto
do you
stage
do
with me. And I kind of then talk it down and say, it's okay, we've got this.
Okay.
We deserve to be here. This is a lifetime of experience. These words, these stories are going to help people. This will make a difference. So instantaneously, the energy within me then changes because then it becomes more motivated.
And you're more in control, maybe?
Well, I'm more in control. And it's kind of like, it's kind of then, this is not about fear. This is about hope.
Yeah.
This is about life. This is about energy. This is about kind of change. So then the energy from the anxiety then gets used in a very, very different way.
Interesting.
That's how I work with it.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here today. Addicted to Anxiety is out now. Anywhere you want to get it. Well, just anywhere, isn't
and
it?
Apologies for the digressions. There have been many.
It's been lovely. I've learned a lot. Thank you so much. Where can everybody find you?
Instagram mainly. I mean, I'm on the usual social platforms, but the handle's Owen O'Kane 10.
Why? Why is it? I noticed that.
Because the
Why
first
10?
book was called 10 to Zen.
Oh.
And then we just kind of went with I think there was somebody else had my name.
How dare they?
So I went with the Owen O'Kane. Yeah, Owen O'Kane 10.
Yeah.
So I'm on the usual social platforms and
not TikTok. You won't find him doing a TikTok dance.
Not just yet.
No. Give it time.
Never know. Fair play to anyone that does it.
Yeah.
I wish I was a bit younger.
Let's do one after we finish this.
Can you imagine? That'll go viral for the wrong reasons.
I'll put my back out.
Exactly.
And then that would give me the fear and anxiety.
Exactly.
So let's not do that.
Back to square one.
Yeah, no. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
The law of attraction has changed my life. It's going to change yours too, bitch. Bye.